My world fell apart overnight. It started on a Wednesday morning. I groggily reached for my phone as I always did, and was hit by a flood of messages. Not the usual good morning texts, but angry, bitter words, accusations, screenshots. My private emails, the ones I had sent in confidence expressing doubts, frustrations, and unfiltered thoughts, had been leaked online. My heart sank as I scrolled through post after post, each one dragging my name through the mud. They called me a manipulator, a liar, a hypocrite. People I cared about had suddenly turned their backs on me. The worst part was, they weren't entirely wrong. Those emails were real. I had written them, but they lacked context. They weren't meant for the world. They were written in moments of vulnerability or frustration, never intended to hurt anyone. But context didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. I sat on the edge of my bed, numb. I kept wondering, who would do this to me? Who had access? My thoughts swirled in a storm of confusion and betrayal. One thing was certain. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately set out to destroy me. I glanced at my phone screen again. The notifications kept pouring in. I got a coffee from the kitchen and tried to take a deep breath, but my hands were shaking. I thought about calling Michael, my older brother, but decided against it. He was always too critical. It would only make things worse. WhatsApp was chaos. Group chats I'd been in since college were now forums for debating my character. A few defended me, but many attacked. I saw my name in Twitter hashtags, linked to words I never thought would be associated with me. I opened my apartment window. Outside, Chicago carried on its frantic routine, indifferent to my world crumbling. The sound of traffic on Michigan Avenue seemed distant. Everything felt unreal, like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I decided to call Richard, my boss at the ad agency where I'd worked for almost 5 years. Better he hear it from me than from someone else. It rang 3 times. Before he answered, his voice already carrying a different tone. "Alex, we have a complicated situation here," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "Clients are calling. Boeing has already threatened to pull their contract." "Richard, I can explain. Those emails? Look, I don't want the details right now. The board is meeting this afternoon. For now, just take a few days off. Forced leave, let's call it that." I hung up, unable to say another word. Forced leave. I knew exactly what that meant. As I combed through the screenshots circulating online, I was able to identify exactly which emails had been exposed. They were mostly conversations with my best friend David, where I vented about problems at work, failed relationships, and occasionally, people close to me. There was a particularly damaging one where I criticized a major client's approach, calling him an arrogant fool. In another, I badmouthed a coworker, suggesting he didn't deserve the promotion he received. There was nothing criminal in them, nothing I could be sued for. But there was enough to tarnish my reputation and make people question my character. I tried to mentally reconstruct who could have access to those emails. My password was relatively strong and I didn't share it. But a few months ago, when my laptop broke, I'd used David's computer to access my account and answer some urgent emails. Had I forgotten to log out? No, I clearly remembered closing everything. My phone rang. It was Tina, my ex-girlfriend. I hesitated, then answered. "Alex, what the hell is this stuff they're saying about you?" "Tina, someone leaked my emails. They're taking everything out of context." "Out of context? I saw what you wrote about me and my family. Classless suburbanites. Was that it?" I swallowed hard. I had written that in a moment of anger after a bad fight. That was after that argument about... "Don't even finish. You are exactly what they're saying you are. A fake. A two-faced jerk." She hung up. Another door slammed shut. I spent the rest of the morning trying to understand the extent of the leak. There were dozens of emails spanning the last 2 years. Someone had done a thorough job, carefully selecting the most damaging excerpts. Around noon, I got a call from Vince, a friend from my Wednesday night soccer league. His voice sounded genuinely concerned. "Man, are you okay? I'm seeing all this craziness." "Not okay at all, Vince. Someone really screwed me over. Look, I just wanted to let you know they're organizing some kind of cancellation on Twitter. People are talking about going after your clients, your family. It's vicious." I thanked him for the heads up. At least one person was still willing to hear me out. I called David several times. Every call went to voicemail. I sent WhatsApp messages that were marked as read but went unanswered. His silence was deafening. In the afternoon, I received an email from the agency's HR department. They were suspending me indefinitely until the situation is resolved. Translation: they were waiting for the dust to settle before formally firing me. Mom called. Her voice was trembling. "Honey, what's happening? Your cousin sent me some screenshots. Is this true?" "Mom, it's complicated. They're my emails, yes, but what you wrote about your father, how could you say those things about him?" I felt a lump in my throat. Among the leaked emails was one where I expressed my frustration with my dad after an argument about money. Harsh words that should have never left a private space. "It was in a moment of anger, Mom. You know how difficult he can be sometimes." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Your father is devastated, Alex." After that call, I turned off my phone. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the window again. The Chicago sky was gray, matching my mood. The rain began to fall. First a few timid drops, then a downpour. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the sofa, watching the rain through the window. In a matter of hours, everything I had built had collapsed. My job, my relationships, my reputation, all in ruins. The most disturbing part was the feeling of violation. Those emails were my private thoughts, my vents, my moments of weakness. To have all of that exposed to the world was like being stripped naked in public with no way to cover myself. As night fell over the city, a certainty grew within me. This wasn't random. It was a calculated attack. And the more I thought about it, the more David's absence became suspicious. Our last meeting had been strange. He seemed distant, almost resentful. At the time, I chalked it up to work stress. Now I wasn't so sure. I decided that as soon as the sun came up, I would start my own investigation. If someone had deliberately ruined my life, I would find out who and why. The rain continued outside, relentless, washing over the city as I sat in the dark, alone with my thoughts, and the growing suspicion that the person I trusted most might be responsible for my downfall. Isolation and anger. The next day dawned as if the entire world had turned its back on me. The previous night's storm had passed, but the storm in my life was only growing stronger. My phone, which I reluctantly turned back on, buzzed incessantly with notifications. They weren't messages of support, but of ostracism. Suddenly, I was a digital leper. I opened Instagram and saw I'd lost nearly 1,000 followers overnight. On LinkedIn, former colleagues had removed their connections to me. 2 freelance clients I did occasional work for sent short emails ending our partnership. One of them, Mrs. Peterson from a bakery in Lincoln Park I'd known for years, didn't even bother to elaborate. "We can no longer work with you. It doesn't align with our family company's values." Values. That word was being thrown at me like a stone. As if my private thoughts vented in moments of frustration defined my entire character. I went out to buy bread at the corner deli. Mr. Chen, who had run the place for decades and always greeted me with a smile and a "Good morning, sir," now just nodded, avoiding my gaze. Could even he know already? On my way back to the apartment, I ran into Mrs. Gable, the building superintendent, in the elevator. The silence was awkward. She stared intently at the floor numbers as if they were the most interesting thing in the world. "Everything okay, Mrs. Gable?" I tried to break the ice. "Everything's fine," she replied curtly, still not looking at me. When the elevator stopped at my floor, She muttered something that sounded like "what a disappointment" as the doors closed. Back in my apartment, I turned on my laptop and started assessing the professional damage. My social media profiles were flooded with negative comments. People I didn't even know personally were sharing screenshots of my emails, adding their own malicious interpretations. One email in particular was causing the most damage. The one where I criticized the owner of the biggest ad agency in Austin, calling him an arrogant dinosaur stuck in the 90s. The man was a legend in the Texas market, and now every professional in the field was turning against me to avoid displeasing the powerful man. I tried calling my brother Michael again. This time he answered, but his voice was cold, distant. "What do you want, Alex?" "I need to talk, Michael. I'm in a tough spot." He sighed on the other end of the line. "Tough spot? You humiliated the entire family. Dad is devastated by what you wrote about him. Mom won't stop crying. And me? Do you know what it's like to have co-workers forwarding you screenshots where your own brother calls you limited and unambitious?" It felt like a punch to the gut. That specific email was from almost 2 years ago, when we fought over our grandmother's inheritance. Words said in the heat of the moment, which I had already forgotten. "Michael, that was during our fight, you know. Look, clean up your own mess before you call me again. I'm tired of cleaning up after you since we were kids." He hung up. The rejection from my own brother hurt more than all the others. We'd always had our differences, but deep down he was always there for me. Until now. The worst part was David's silence. My best friend. The one who knew all my secrets. Who I shared an apartment with in college. Who helped me when I was unemployed for 6 months. The guy who was the best man at my wedding and then held me together through the divorce. I sent message after message with no reply. I decided to try one last time. "David, I don't know what's going on, but I need my friend right now. I'm sinking, man." Read. No reply. Something about his silence deeply unsettled me. It wasn't just absence, it felt calculated, as if he was deliberately avoiding me, or worse, as if he knew more than he was letting on. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got an unexpected call. It was Julia, a colleague from the agency who I was never particularly close to. "Alex? It's Julia. Look, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know. The people at the agency are organizing a sort of open letter, positioning themselves against you. They're pressuring everyone to sign it." "Are you kidding me? I worked there for 5 years, I built that client portfolio." "I know, that's why I'm calling. I thought it was unfair. But there's more. I heard Richard mentioning that someone sent the emails directly to the clients even before they leaked online. It was very well orchestrated. That information hit me like a lightning bolt. It confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't a random hack. It was planned destruction. "Julia, do you have any idea who could be behind this?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure, but I saw David leaving Richard's office yesterday right before everything exploded. They seemed close." David and Richard, my best friend and my boss, the betrayal seemed to deepen with every minute. "Thanks, Julia, really. Don't thank me. And please don't mention I called." I hung up and stared at the wall. Anger was beginning to replace the initial shock. If David was really involved in this, why? What could I have possibly done to deserve such revenge? My phone rang again. "Unknown number," I answered cautiously. "Hello? Alex Miller?" A professional male voice. "Yes, who is this?" "This is the Austin Chronicle. We're doing a story on your leaked emails and would like to get your side." I felt my blood run cold. Now I was newspaper-worthy? "No comment at this time," I replied and hung up quickly. Seconds later, another unknown number. This time a local blog, then a radio station. I turned my phone off again, feeling the panic rise. How had this escalated so quickly? Who had an interest in destroying me with such dedication? I looked out the window. The sun was beginning to set over downtown Austin, the colors reflecting on the Colorado River. The city I had always considered my home now felt hostile, filled with people who believed they knew my character based on decontextualized fragments of my private life. I decided I needed to get out, clear my head. I grabbed my car keys and went down to the garage. On the side wall of the building, a shock. Someone had spray-painted "fake" in huge red letters. The message was clear and undoubtedly aimed at me. I drove aimlessly through the city, avoiding places where I might run into people I knew. I ended up at Barton Springs Pool, nearly empty at that hour. I sat on the grassy hill and watched the water. The ripples moved back and forth, indifferent to the chaos in my life. For a moment, I envied that simplicity. My thoughts kept returning to David, to our last meeting 2 weeks ago. We were at Charlie's, our usual spot. He seemed distant, drinking more than usual. When I mentioned the possibility of being promoted to creative director at the agency, a position we both coveted, he forced a smile and said, "You always get what you want, don't you?" I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that sentence took on a new meaning. A suspicion began to form. What if David was behind all of this? What if my best friend, the person I trusted most, was responsible for my destruction? I went back to the car and grabbed my laptop. Briefly turning on my phone, I downloaded all the screenshots of the leaked emails I could find. If I was going to find out the truth, I needed evidence. If David had really betrayed me like this, I needed to understand how and why. Night had completely fallen when I returned to the apartment. The anger now boiled inside me, replacing the initial sadness. The graffiti on the building wall had been covered up, probably by management, but the mark was still visible under the fresh paint. I went up to my apartment, determined. The forced isolation had one advantage: free time to investigate. Those who turned their backs on me so quickly, who judged me without hearing my side, might one day regret it. But what motivated me most was finding out if David, my supposed best friend, was truly capable of such a betrayal. That night, as Austin slept, I began my investigation. If someone had deliberately destroyed my life, I would find out who, and I would make them pay. Clues in the ashes. I spent the entire night hunched over my laptop, meticulously analyzing every leaked email. The sun was already rising when I noticed a pattern. It wasn't all of my emails that had been exposed, only the ones that could harm me. Someone had made a careful selection, choosing precisely the messages that would cause the most damage. I made a strong coffee and continued my investigation. I created a spreadsheet listing each leaked email, who it was originally sent to, the date, and the subject. Something started to stand out. The vast majority of the compromising messages had been sent to, or CC'd to David. The few exceptions were emails sent to my ex-wife, Sarah, during our messy divorce. I looked at the screenshots, metadata. Most had been taken on an iPhone. David used an iPhone 13. A few were taken from a computer, possibly a MacBook, which David also used. None of this was definitive proof, but the coincidences were starting to pile up. I remembered that David had used my laptop a few weeks ago, when his was acting up during a work meeting we had at my apartment. Could he have taken the opportunity to access my Gmail? But why wait so long to use that information against me? I opened my Google account and checked the recent activity. Nothing suspicious in the last few days, but I noticed something strange. 3 weeks ago, there was a login to my Gmail from an IP address I didn't recognize. I looked up the location. It was from the South Lamar area, the neighborhood where David lived. At this point, my suspicion was turning into certainty. But I still needed to understand the motive. What would have driven David, my friend of so many years, to plan such an elaborate revenge? I sifted through my memories, searching for signs I might have ignored. In recent months, David had seemed more distant, more critical. Little sarcastic comments that I had attributed to work stress at the time now took on new meaning. "You always land on your feet, don't you, Alex?" Or, "Funny how things always work out for you." There was something else. David had applied for the same promotion I was up for at the agency. The position of creative director that, according to internal rumors, was going to be mine. Could that be it? Professional jealousy? I kept analyzing the screenshots. In one of them, I noticed something in the bottom corner, a reflection. I zoomed in as much as I could. It was the reflection of a picture frame. I recognized it. It was that hideous bronze frame David kept on his bedroom desk, a gift from his grandmother he didn't have the heart to put away. That specific photo could only have been taken in his apartment. As I was investigating, I received an unexpected message. It was from Jessica, our colleague from the agency, and David's ex-girlfriend. "Alex, I need to tell you something. Can we meet?" I replied immediately, setting up a coffee meeting near her place in the Bouldan Creek neighborhood. Less than an hour later, we were sitting at a secluded table in a nearly empty coffee shop. Jessica seemed nervous, constantly looking around as if she were afraid of being seen. "I shouldn't be talking to you," she began, anxiously fiddling with the sugar dispenser. "Everyone at the agency is avoiding any association with you." "I appreciate you coming then. What's going on?" She took a deep breath. "I think I know who leaked your emails. I saw something disturbing." My heart raced. It was David, wasn't it? Her surprised look confirmed my suspicion before she even answered. "How do you know?" "I've been putting the pieces together since yesterday. I'm almost certain, but I need to understand why." Jessica took a sip of her coffee as if for courage. "About 3 weeks ago, David asked me out to dinner. I thought he wanted to get back together, but he only talked about you. About how you always had it easy. How the promotion should be his, not yours." "Was he drunk?" "Not at first, but he kept drinking throughout the night. Once he was buzzed, he started saying scary things. He said he was going to put you in your place, that he would show who you really are." I thought it was just the alcohol talking. A chill ran down my spine. And then? 2 days ago, I went to his apartment to pick up some of my things that were still there. He wasn't home, but his cleaning lady let me in. I saw his laptop open in his bedroom. On the screen, there were several screenshots of your emails organized into folders. There was a text file named Plan A. I didn't read it all, I was scared. But I saw it mentioned sending the emails to your clients and then leaking them online. I fell silent, absorbing the information. It was too elaborate to be just an angry outburst. David had meticulously planned my destruction. "Why are you telling me this now, Jessica?" She looked away. "Because this is sick. No matter what you did or wrote, nobody deserves this. And also," she hesitated, "David scared me. His obsession with you isn't normal. It feels too personal." I thanked Jessica for the information. Before she left, she added one last detail. "There's something else. David has been meeting with your boss, Richard, outside of work. Several times. I don't think it's just about work." That completed the puzzle. David not only betrayed me, but was conspiring with my boss. The promotion would probably be his now. I went home and continued my investigation with renewed vigor. I went on David's Instagram and found a recent photo at an expensive restaurant. I recognized the place. It was Richard's favorite. In the comments, Richard had written, "Excellent conversation, the future is bright." The photo had been posted 3 days before the leak. I decided to check if David had left any more tracks. I went on LinkedIn and saw that he had already updated his profile, creative director, in transition. The audacity was unbelievable. He didn't even wait for the dust to settle to claim the position that should have been mine. In the afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Frank, the IT guy, at the agency. He was always reserved, the type of person who observes more than he speaks. "Alex, it's Frank. Look, I shouldn't be calling you, but I need to tell you something." "What is it, Frank?" "Last week, David asked me to recover some old emails you had sent him. He said they were references for important projects and he needed them for a presentation. Since he's a supervisor, I didn't question it." My breath caught in my throat. "And you helped him?" "Yes, I recovered several emails from his account that had already been deleted. It was only after everything blew up that I realized what I had done." I thanked Frank for the information. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Now I was practically certain that David was responsible. The access to my Gmail from an IP in his area, the screenshots taken in his apartment, Jessica's testimony about the written plan, Frank's help in recovering old emails, the secret meetings with Richard. Everything pointed to an elaborate conspiracy. But I still needed definitive proof, something that would leave no doubt and could perhaps help me clear my name. I remembered that David and I shared a Google Drive folder where we kept documents for freelance projects we did together. I went into it and started checking the access logs. That's when I noticed something crucial. 3 days before the leak, David had downloaded all the files from the folder and then removed my access to several documents. Why would he do that, if he wasn't planning to cut ties? I had to confront him. Not just to confirm my suspicions, but to understand the depth of this betrayal. What drives a person to destroy years of friendship like this? I tried calling again. Voicemail. I sent a message. I know it was you, David. I have proof. Are we going to talk about this like adults? Or do you prefer I take this further? Almost instantly, his status changed to online. The message was read. For a few minutes, I saw the indicator that he was typing, stopping, typing again. Finally, the reply came. My apartment. 8 p.m. Come alone. It was all I needed. That was not the response of an innocent man. I spent the next few hours organizing all the evidence I had collected. I saved it on flash drives, sent it to alternate email addresses, made physical copies. If David thought he could simply erase his tracks, he was mistaken. As the clock ticked towards 8 o'clock, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, disappointment, but above all, determination. If David had orchestrated my downfall, he would have to look me in the eye and admit it. The sun was setting over Austin as I left my house and headed towards his apartment in the South Lamar neighborhood. The streets were congested with the typical late afternoon traffic, impatient drivers honking, the heat still intense despite the hour. I pulled up in front of his building, an upper-middle-class high-rise with a modern facade. The doorman recognized me and waved me in without announcing my arrival, a sign of how many times I had been there as a friend. As I rode the elevator up to the 8th floor, I mentally reviewed all the evidence. There was no longer any doubt in my mind. The question now was, what would David say when confronted? And what would I do next? The door to apartment 802 was ajar when I arrived, a silent invitation to enter and discover the truth behind the betrayal that had turned my life upside down. The traitor unmasked. I walked into David's apartment, my heart hammering against my chest. The place was dimly lit, illuminated only by a corner lamp. I recognized every detail of the space, the bookshelf I helped him assemble, the couch where we watched so many Cowboys games, the photos on the walls that told stories of our adventures together. 15 years of friendship scattered throughout the decor. David was sitting in the leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He wasn't drunk, but he'd had enough to loosen his defenses. He didn't get up when he saw me. He just looked up, his face a mixture of defiance and something that almost looked like relief. I thought you wouldn't come, he said, his voice lower than usual. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I replied, still standing, keeping my distance. Why, David? Why throw away 15 years of friendship? He took a long swallow of whiskey, as if drawing courage from the alcohol. You really don't get it, do you? That's your biggest problem, Alex. You never see beyond your own world. Then explain it to me, I insisted, feeling my anger rise. Make me understand what the hell went through your head to ruin my life like this. David stood up abruptly, his expression hardening. Your life? Your life has always been perfect. Everything always worked out for you. The college you wanted, the jobs you wanted, the women you wanted. Meanwhile, I was always the damn sidekick in the story of the great Alex Miller. I was stunned by the bitter outburst. What are you talking about? We went through the same struggles. We started at the agency together. No, he cut me off, slamming his glass on the coffee table. We did not go through the same struggles. You grew up in a nice suburb, went to the best schools. I came from a blue-collar family, worked twice as hard to get where I am. And still, with every promotion, every opportunity, who did they choose? You. Always you. I shook my head, trying to process what I was hearing. This is about the promotion? You destroyed my reputation over a job title? David let out a bitter laugh. It's not just the job, it's everything. It's the way you always get what you want without even realizing how much you hurt others in the process. What others? Who did I hurt? He stared at me as if the answer was obvious. Jessica, you knew I had a crush on her since college. And what did you do? You hooked up with her at that New Year's party, even knowing how I felt. That was years ago, before he and Jessica even dated. She came on to me, David, and you two weren't even together yet. It doesn't matter. It's always like that. People gravitate towards you like you're the damn sun. And me, I'm just disposable. I saw something in his eyes I had never noticed before. A deep, corrosive envy that seemed to have consumed any affection that once existed between us. And the promotion was the last straw, I continued, starting to understand. You thought you deserved it more than I did. David walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Richard called me in a month ago. He said it was between the two of us for creative director. He said I had more time with the company, more technical experience, but you had more charisma, more presence. As if that matters more than competence. So you decided to destroy me. He turned to me, and I saw there was no remorse in his eyes. I decided to show them who you really are. Those emails, that's the real Alex Miller. The one who talks crap about clients behind their backs. The one who criticizes his colleagues. The one who treats his own family like they're beneath him. They were private vents, David. Everyone has moments of frustration. Everyone says things they don't really mean when they're stressed. Oh, really? So you don't really think Michael is limited? That Tina comes from a classless family? That Richard is a suck-up? Every word was a stab, thrown back at me with cruel precision. I took a step forward, my anger finally overpowering my shock. How did you do it? How did you get access to my emails? A faint smile formed on his lips. You were always careless with passwords. That afternoon at your apartment when my laptop crashed, you typed your Gmail password right in front of me. It wasn't hard to memorize. And Richard? Is he in on this? David shrugged. Let's just say we had aligned interests. He never liked how you won over the bigger clients. He thought you had too much talent to be controlled. Each revelation was worse than the last. It wasn't just David. It was a deliberate conspiracy to take me down. Do you realize what you've done? I asked, my voice trembling with contained rage. You didn't just destroy my career. You destroyed my relationships, my family. Collateral damage, he replied coldly. Maybe now you'll know what it's like to lose everything. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the shirt, shoving him against the wall. You're sick. 15 years of friendship and you stab me in the back out of jealousy, out of resentment? For an instant I saw fear in his eyes, as if he was only now realizing the magnitude of what he had done. I let him go, stepping back, knowing that violence would only make my situation worse. Do you have any idea what you've caused? I continued, trying to control my breathing. My parents are barely speaking to me. I lost my job. My brother hates me. You'll survive, he said, straightening his crumpled shirt. You always survive. You always land on your feet. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I recorded this entire conversation, David. Every confession. Every detail of your sordid little plan. His expression changed instantly. The look of superiority vanished, replaced by panic. You wouldn't. Why not? You destroyed my life. Why shouldn't I destroy yours? He took a step toward me, trying to grab my phone. "Give me that." I backed away, putting the phone away. "I'm not giving you anything. I'm going to walk out of here, and you're going to sit and think about what you've done, wondering if at any moment this recording will leak, just like you leaked my emails." "Alex, wait." The arrogance now replaced by pleading. "We can work this out. I can talk to Richard, explain it was all a misunderstanding." "Now you want to work it out? After destroying everything I built?" I walked toward the door, disgusted by his hypocrisy. "You won't believe this, but I'm not like you. I'm not going to ruin your life for revenge. I'm going to rebuild mine, in spite of what you did." When I reached the door, I turned around one last time. David looked smaller now, cornered, his arrogance completely drained. "You know what's ironic? I would have turned down the promotion if I knew how much it meant to you. I would have backed your name, because that's what real friends do." I left the apartment without looking back, leaving the door open. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall for a moment, feeling the weight of the last few days finally crash down on me. The betrayal had a face now, a face I knew as well as my own. The elevator, I deleted the recording. I hadn't actually recorded anything. It was a bluff to see his reaction, and his reaction confirmed everything. But revenge wouldn't bring my life back. I needed to find another way. As I left the building, the night was hot and humid, typical for Austin. I walked a few blocks aimlessly, trying to process everything that had happened. The streets of the neighborhood were full of life. Crowded bars, people chatting, living their normal lives while mine was in pieces. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from David. "I'm sorry. I lost control. Can we talk tomorrow?" I didn't reply. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. Some betrayals are too great to be forgiven. I looked up at the starry Austin sky. Somewhere in this city, I would have to find the strength to start over, to pick up the pieces of what was left of my life and build something new. Rebuilding from the rubble. The following weeks passed in a hazy blur. I woke up every day with that momentary feeling of normalcy, before remembering that nothing was normal anymore. My phone, once a constant source of communication, now remained silent for hours. The notifications that did come through were almost always negative. Another friend who unfollowed, another client canceling a contract, or some malicious comment on an old post. After the confrontation with David, I decided I had to act. I couldn't just let the storm drag me under. The morning after our meeting, I wrote a long, honest post explaining my side of the story. I didn't mention David by name. Exposing him publicly wouldn't bring my life back and would only prolong the drama. I talked about the invasion of privacy, about lost context, and most importantly, I took responsibility for the words that were actually mine. I published the text on all my social media platforms and sent it to a few local press contacts. I didn't expect a huge reaction, but I needed my voice to be heard, even if by only a few. The reaction was mixed. A few friends sent messages of support. Most kept their distance. The clients I had lost didn't come back. But at least the online mob mentality subsided. People have short memories for other people's scandals. New targets and controversies would soon emerge. My financial situation started to become a concern. Without my salary from the agency and with freelance work drying up, my savings were dwindling fast. The rent for my upscale apartment was eating up a large chunk of what I had saved. I needed a plan. That's when I got an unexpected call from Mr. Johnson, a man in his late 60s who owned a small print shop downtown. I had done some work for him in the past, designing catalogs and business cards. "Alex, my boy, how are you?" His voice was comforting without any trace of judgment. "Getting by, Mr. Johnson. Tough days." "I can imagine. Look, I don't really know what happened, just heard bits and pieces, but I wanted to make you a proposition. I'm thinking of modernizing the shop, getting into the digital market. I need someone with your talent to help me with this transition." The offer felt like rain in a desert. It was nothing compared to what I used to make, But it was a start. More importantly, it was someone who still believed in me. "When can I start?" I asked, feeling the first glimmer of hope in weeks. "Tomorrow, if you can. The shop needs a shot of youth." The next day, I walked into Johnson Print, a traditional establishment that smelled of ink and paper. Mr. Johnson greeted me with a firm hug, the kind that doesn't care what others think. He introduced me to the employees, all of whom had been there for at least 20 years, as the young man who's going to teach us about this internet stuff. The work was basic compared to what I used to do: create a website, establish a social media presence, modernize the brand identity. But there was something comforting in the simplicity, in the absence of pressure for million-dollar results, in the genuine gratitude Mr. Johnson showed with every small step forward. At the end of the first week, he called me for coffee. "Alex, I'm not one to meddle, but I'm old enough to be your father. What happened to you?" I hesitated for a moment, but something in the old man's sincerity made me open up. I told him everything: the leaked emails, David's betrayal, the loss of my job and friends. He listened in silence, nodding occasionally, without interrupting. "You know, son, I'm 68 years old. I've seen a lot in my life. I've learned that a reputation is like crystal. It shatters easily and can never be perfectly restored. But I've also learned that time is the best healer. People forget, or at least they stop caring. And in the meantime, you rebuild. Not the same life, a new one, maybe even a better one." Those simple words held more wisdom than all the self-help articles I had read in the past weeks. I moved into a smaller apartment in a more modest neighborhood, closer to the print shop. I cut expenses, established a new routine. My nights, once filled with dinners at expensive restaurants and social events, were now dedicated to reading, online courses, and occasionally sessions with Dr. Evans, a therapist I found through an affordable mental health program. "What hurts the most in this whole situation?" she asked me during one of our first sessions. "The injustice," I replied without hesitation. "Being judged by fragments taken out of context." "And what else?" I thought for a moment. "The betrayal. That it came from someone so close." She nodded. "And what have you learned about yourself through all of this?" The question caught me off guard. "I learned that," I began, searching for the words. "I learned that maybe I'm not as transparent as I thought. That I held on to a lot of things I should have said directly to people." The sessions with Dr. Evans became anchors in my week. Not just to process the betrayal, but to understand patterns I had repeated for years without realizing. How I used sarcasm as a shield. How I avoided direct conflict, preferring to vent in private emails instead of confronting situations. How, at times, I had been unfair in my judgments of others. 2 months after the incident, I got a call from my brother Michael. It was short, still distant, but it opened a door. "Mom's turning 60 on Saturday. We're having lunch at my place if you want to come." The lunch was uncomfortable at first. Forced conversations, averted gazes. My father, always reserved, barely spoke a word to me. But my mother, after the cake and pictures, pulled me aside to the porch. "Son, I don't know exactly what happened. I know you wrote things that hurt us, but I also know it's not fair to define a person by their worst moments." Her eyes were misty, and I felt mine well up too. "I'm sorry, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you guys." She held my hands. "We disappoint each other. We hurt each other. But we don't stop loving. Your father will take longer to show it, you know, how he is. But this will pass too." That small gesture of family reconciliation was like a balm. It didn't erase the past, but it offered a glimpse of a future. At work, things started to improve. The print shop's website attracted new clients. Mr. Johnson, excited by the results, gave me more responsibilities and a small raise. I started taking on some freelance work again. Nothing huge, but enough to supplement my income. One day I got an email from Julia, the colleague who had warned me about the conspiracy at the agency. She told me that David wasn't doing well as creative director. Key clients were unhappy, and the team was unmotivated. Richard, my ex-boss, was beginning to realize he might have backed the wrong horse. I didn't feel any joy at the news, just a strange sense that justice was taking its own course, without my intervention. David tried to contact me a few times in the following months. Messages, emails, even a handwritten letter sent to the print shop. In every one, he begged for forgiveness, said he was sorry, and wanted to talk. I didn't reply to any of them. Some wounds are too deep to be closed with words. 6 months after the leak, I received a surprising invitation. A digital marketing startup newly established in Austin's tech hub wanted to interview me. Its owner, Philip, was a former client who had always admired my work and, as he put it, didn't give a damn about market gossip. The interview was direct. Philip mentioned the scandal right away. "Look, I know what happened. I read the leaked emails. I also read your response. What matters to me is your talent and your honesty now. Are you interested in a fresh start?" The offer was good. Not as good as my old position, but promising. A new environment, people who didn't know my history, or if they did, didn't care much about it. I accepted immediately. On my last week at the print shop, Mr. Johnson organized a small farewell happy hour. Cold beer, mini sausage rolls, classic rock playing in the background. A simplicity that contrasted with the extravagant parties at the agency, but that had an authenticity I had forgotten how to appreciate. "I'm happy for you, son," Mr. Johnson said in a quieter moment. "When you got here, you looked like a stray dog in the rain. Now you've got a different spark in your eyes. I owe you a lot. You were one of the few who gave me a chance when everyone else turned their backs." He smiled, his wrinkled eyes almost disappearing. "Everyone deserves a second chance. And listen, the door here will always be open for you." I left the print shop that night with a lighter heart. The life I had known had been shattered, but something new was emerging from the ruins. Not better or worse, just different. And maybe that was enough. Lessons etched on my skin. A year has passed since that Wednesday turned my life upside down. Time, as Mr. Johnson said, really does smooth the edges of the worst experiences. It doesn't erase the scars, but it makes it hurt less to touch them. Philip's startup grew quickly, winning major clients in the Southwest market. My work was recognized, not with awards or major headlines, but with the renewed trust of clients and my team. Slowly, I built a new reputation, founded not on a perfect image, but on integrity and transparency. One Saturday morning, while having coffee at a cafe in Zilker Park, I watched tourists taking pictures of the city skyline. Families strolled. By enjoying the breeze, couples held hands and old-timers sat on their usual benches. Life continued its flow, indifferent to individual dramas. It was comforting in a way, this perspective of smallness in the face of the world. My phone vibrated. It was a LinkedIn notification. I opened it casually and took a few seconds to process what I was seeing. David had been fired from the agency. The news didn't come from him directly, but from the platform's automatic updates. His profile now read, "Seeking new opportunities." I didn't feel satisfaction, as the Alex of a year ago might have. Not even pity, just a strange neutrality. What David did marked my life forever, but I realized he no longer occupied space in my daily thoughts. It was like a book I had already finished reading. I could remember the story, but I was no longer immersed in it. In the early afternoon, I got a call from my dad. It was still rare for him to call me directly. Our reconciliation was happening. In slow steps, especially since he was never a man of many words. "Son, I'm fixing up the cabin in the hill country. I thought maybe you could come up this weekend to take a look, give me some ideas." It was his way of extending a hand, of saying the door was open again. "Of course, Dad, I can do that." The cabin in the hill country, a scenic region an hour from Austin, had been the family's getaway since my childhood. A place for Sunday barbecues, peaches picked straight from the tree, and dips in the creek on hot days. Returning there with my father had a symbolism that we both understood without needing to say it. We spent the entire Saturday working on the renovations together. We painted the porch, fixed the chicken coop fence, pruned the fruit trees. Little talk, lots of work, the language my father always understood best. At the end of the day, we sat on the porch with 2 cold beers watching the sunset behind the hills. "You're different," he commented, breaking a long silence. "How so?" "I don't know how to explain it. More calm, less worried about what other people think." I smiled, surprised by his perception. "I guess I learned a few lessons the hard way." He nodded, taking a sip of his beer. "Sometimes that's the only way to really learn." That simple moment with my father, under the Orange Hill country sky, brought a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Things wouldn't go back to how they were, they never do. But they could be good in a different way. My relationship with Michael also improved gradually. We started playing soccer together again on Wednesday nights with a group of mutual friends. After the games, we'd always grab a beer at Charlie's, talking about trivial things, sports, politics, avoiding deeper topics. Until after several months, he finally brought it up. "That email, what you wrote about me," he began, uncomfortable. Was there any truth to it? I could have lied, said it was just a moment of anger. But the new Alex I was building had promised himself to be more honest even when it hurt. "Yeah, man, there was. At the time, I really thought you were settling, that you could be reaching for more in life. But I realized later that we're on different journeys. You've always valued stability, family, routine. I was obsessed with success, recognition. Neither path is better than the other, just different." He reflected for a few moments, spinning the beer bottle between his fingers. "Fair enough. I guess I've had some harsh thoughts about you over the years, too. I thought you were arrogant, a show-off, living to impress other people. And you weren't entirely wrong," I admitted with a smile. Michael laughed. "Yeah, seems. We both have some pretty honest versions of each other stored away. The difference is now we're saying it to each other's faces, not in private emails that can get leaked." We toasted to that, to the raw honesty that only brothers can share without breaking the bond. Professionally, things evolved in a surprising way. Philip, my boss at the startup, decided to open an office in Chicago and invited me to lead the operation. It was an opportunity to start over in a bigger city, where the echo of the scandal might be more diluted. I accepted the challenge. Before moving, I made sure to stop by Johnson Print to say goodbye to Mr. Johnson. I found him as always, among stacks of paper, checking proofs with his glasses on the tip of his nose. "Chicago, huh?" He smiled, adjusting his glasses. "The big city is getting a talented son back. Thanks to you, sir, for lending me a hand when I needed it most." He waved his hand dismissively. "Nonsense. I just saw what many couldn't see behind the scandal. A good kid who made mistakes just like the rest of us." I hugged the old man, who had been much more than a temporary boss. He had been a lighthouse in the storm. On the eve of my move, while packing my bags, I found a box of old photos. There were several with David. At our college graduation, on trips we took together, at barbecues at my parents' house. 15 years of memories frozen on matte paper. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia, almost sadness. So many good times, so much shared history, all ruined by envy and resentment. I picked up my phone and saw that I still had his number saved. The last contact had been almost 8 months ago. A message from him asking to talk, which I left unanswered. I hesitated, my finger hovering over his name on the screen. I could call. I could give him the chance to explain himself again, to ask for forgiveness face to face. Maybe we could even rebuild some kind of relationship. But something inside me knew that some bridges once burned should not be rebuilt. Not out of resentment or an inability to forgive, but because trust, once broken in that way, never fully returns. It would always be a haunted friendship, full of unspoken doubts. I put my phone away. I put the photos back in the box and left it in the closet of the room that would soon no longer be mine. Some things were better left behind. On the morning of my departure, I had one last coffee at Mr. Chen's deli. He had already returned to his friendly demeanor, as if the scandal had never happened. "Off to Chicago, eh?" "The Windy City," he commented as he served my coffee. "That's right, Mr. Chen. A new chapter. You'll do great. You've got grit." He added a pastry to my order. "On the house, for good luck." Small gestures that reminded me that despite everything, there was still kindness in the world. At the airport, my family showed up to say goodbye. My parents, Michael with his wife and young son, even an aunt I hadn't seen in months. Tight hugs, promises of visits, the assurance that the room at the cabin would always be waiting for me. During the flight, as I watched Austin shrink through the airplane window, I reflected on everything that had happened in the last year. The fall hitting rock bottom, the slow reconstruction. I wasn't the same person. The Alex arriving in Chicago carried invisible scars, but also a strength he didn't know he had before. I learned the hard way that a reputation is fragile, that friendships can hide deep resentments, that words written in moments of frustration can come back to haunt you. But I also learned about resilience, about the human capacity to start over, about the importance of being authentic even when it hurts. In the big city waiting for me below, no one knew my story. I could completely reinvent myself, create a polished version with no rough edges. But I knew I wouldn't do that. I would carry my experiences with honesty, neither hiding them nor defining myself exclusively by them. The flight attendant announced our imminent landing. I adjusted my seat, preparing to touch down in a new life. The Alex who would deplane at O'Hare was not the same one who had boarded at Bergstrom a year earlier. He was someone who learned, in the most painful way possible, that our true strength isn't in never falling but in how we get up after the fall. Chicago opened up before me, immense, chaotic, full of possibilities. A blank page where I would write the next chapter, not with the ink of idealized perfection, but with the sincerity of someone who had met the worst of himself and decided to be better every day. The plane touched down. A new beginning. Not perfect, not immaculate, but authentic. And that, I learned, is far more valuable than any flawless reputation built on sand.